This is a very nice arm stretch warm-up that we call the Squirrel, and it's a great exercise for anyone to open up the arms, open up the chest, and especially useful also to prepare violin players, viola players, guitar players, mandolin players for approaching their instrument. So to do this, we're standing on the floor, balanced, we're coming up from the floor, head resting on top of the spine, and we're awake to the whole space around us. And then we're going to think of softening the inside of the upper arms, just releasing them so we can have a length flowing through the arms from the shoulders to the elbows to the wrists, all the way to the tips of the fingers, to the tips of the little fingers, the ring fingers, the middle fingers, the index fingers, and the thumbs. And then the wrists are going to come floating up. So the wrists are floating up like this. But the elbows are still resting by our sides. And once the wrists have floated up and we're sort of here in squirrel mode, then we're going to ask the tips of the elbows to come slightly forwards, away from the back, away from the shoulder blades. And once we're there, we're asking the tips of the elbows to release away from each other. So they're going away from each other. And this might pull a bit on for many people on the inside of the upper arms, some people on the elbows, sometimes the lower arms, might be some tingling. That's fine, don't force it, don't try to pull through anything, don't try to bring them up, but we're only asking the elbows to soften away from each other. And we can ask at some point to stop for a moment and see, is there a little more space? If I ask for a little more space, then that's fine, but we're not forcing anything. Notice the whole space from the one elbow to the other, across the whole of the chest, across the whole of the back. And then we're releasing those elbows a little bit again to here. And then we're going to rotate the lower arms to flip them over. So we're there. And from there, we can ask the fingertips in turn to spread away from each other. And again, not forcing, not pulling up, just asking them to soften away from each other. And when it pulls, you just stop for a moment, you stand there, nicely balancing on the floor, head resting on top of the spine, the whole of the space around you. And maybe if you ask for a little more space from the one hand to the other, there's a little more opening happening. And from here, to release the arms, we're going to pretend we're in a swimming pool and the ceiling is the surface of the water. We're swimming underwater and we want to swim up to the surface. So our arms are going down to bring us up to the ceiling, up to the surface. So that's the squirrel. And there's a nice variation to this that you can do, especially as a violin player, viola player, guitar player, mandolin player, etc. Which is, again, we're standing in balance on the floor, head resting on top of the spine, and the wrists are floating up, elbows still resting by our sides. And then the elbows softening forwards away from the back, away from the shoulder blades. And then the elbows are softening away from each other, softening away, softening away. We're not pulling, we're not pushing, We're just floating those elbows away from each other. And then again we're releasing the elbows a little bit again till they're here. And we're going to flip over the lower arms. Flip, like that. And then we're flipping over the right lower arm once again. Flip. And then we're actually kind of in playing mode, while having bypassed the whole of the usual way the shoulders like to organize themselves around our instruments. So in this way, and zup, we're actually where we could play our instruments, but with a completely open and differently organized chest. So there's the squirrel.